Hey y'all, welcome back. I'm Shayna Cersei, and I'm so excited to paint with you today for another watercolor journal page. This is the one we did last time. Today we're going to be doing a little forest scene with light and shadow and talking about light and shadow, so make sure to stick around. But first, really quickly, I had a comment from someone who wanted some tips and tricks on how to organize their studio and how I did that, or their supplies. So the short answer is I'm not very good at it. So I'm going to show you my studio and what my desk looks like right now. Now, my caveat is probably once a week, I really do go through and reorganize all of my supplies. And one of the biggest saving graces is that I do a lot of my painting in journals and then only bigger pieces on loose paper. I didn't always do it that way, but most of my paintings are right now are in journals. So my biggest organizational tool is that I paint in journals. So for a lot of my work. So those are all kept together on a bookshelf. But here, let me show you the rest of my studio before we get to our forest painting. All right, so this is what my desk looks like right now. Super not very organized. I got everything I need kind of within reach for this video, but things I'm not even using, sketchbook, random stack of cups that I use for classes sometimes, a bunch of spray bottles, a basket over there of scrap paper, which is actually very helpful. I put all my scrap papers in there so I can use the backs for swatch cards. But generally, this is what my desk looks like. I do put my brushes in this Padfolio. It usually stays open and flat as they dry. That is probably my most organized piece of equipment other than like my palette itself. So I can at least find all of my brushes that I use regularly. So this is what my desk looks like. You only get to see this tiny little bit. Here on camera, so this is what you get to see. So you can imagine that everything is pristinely organized around me. So, but yeah, I just wanted to give you that little insight before we start painting. Today we're going to focus on light and shadow. We're going to do a couple little forest scenes, just talking about light, and do some practice in our journal for that. So I can certainly give some tips and tricks on how to organize and some things I have for when I travel with my paints and keep things organized. But yeah, okay, I'm not an expert at it by any means. All right, so let's get started with our practice with light and shadow. So I'm going to do a couple little forest scenes with trees and just talking about how light will create shadows in that situation. A lot of people like to learn kind of new things, and we take for granted that everybody knows or can just observe from the world around them how light is behaving. And light is the foundation pretty much for all art. Without light, we cannot see, and without sight, we cannot experience visual arts with our eyes anyway. There's lots of ways to experience the arts with multiple senses, but this is that one. So let's talk about light. So we're going to create a little forest scene. We're going to keep this simple. I'm going to use a little bit of phthalo blue. I was also reminded in the comments that I say phthalo a lot without the blue part. There are other phthalo colors like green. But mine is always, if I say phthalo, it's always going to be blue. I don't have any phthalo green in my palette. And I'm going to use some sap green. Try to keep it a little simple. And we'll definitely use some burnt umber, or I'm sorry, raw umber and burnt sienna. So dark, cool brown, and I'll use some raw sienna. I think we'll start out with those for now, and I'll probably add a yellow in there. Maybe I'll I'm trying to use this nickel azo yellow a little bit more, so we'll use that yellow. All right, so here we can swatch these out real quick. So phthalo blue, sap green, this is the nickel azo yellow, and I said raw umber, and burnt sienna. So that should give us a nice little palette to work with. Okay, so let's talk about creating a very simple landscape, and then we'll put some shadows in. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a nice light sky up here. Nothing too crazy, just with my phthalo, adding some water. I'll bring it all the way down to like where a horizon line might be. So not masking anything out, but just kind of keeping it small and simple. Now let's add in some green, a nice light wash of green for the ground. And actually we can mix this with some of this yellow too. We can do some yellow and green down below. There we go. And now we're going to let these dry, and I'm going to add in some trees, and then we're going to add in our light source. So this is pretty flat. There's no light coming from any particular direction necessarily. It's just a regular, evenly lit landscape. Very simple, sky, ground. Okay, let it dry, and then let's add in some trees and talk about light. All right, we're back and everything is dry here. So let's add in some trees, but let's first talk about where our light source is going to be. So I'm going to put my trees on this side of the page, and I am going to have light coming from this direction. So it will be coming, we'll draw right on here, this way from over here. And coming through the trees. So what happens when light is over here and it's coming this way and you have an object in the way, so if I have a tree here, there's an object in the way, and this is actually a great demonstration because I have a light source kind of over here on this side, it's going to cast a shadow. That shadow is going to fall across the ground. This shadow isn't that dramatic, but you can see it casts a shadow from my brush, and what happens is this side of the object, the side that the light is on, is going to be brighter, and the side that is hidden or away from the object is going to be darker. So let's put in some trees. So I'm going to start with some light burnt sienna. I keep saying raw sienna. Let me just fix my palette here so it's not as wobbly. There we go. And let me zoom out just a little bit so you can see my palette. There we go, a little better. All right, so let's start with our first layer. I'm using a size, I didn't go over supplies, size 10 round brush. I also have a size 4 I'll probably pull in here. Velvet touch brush, any round brush will do, Bao sketchbook, and then core paint, QOR by Golden. So I'm just going to put in a few with a little bit of space between, so they're kind of going back in the distance, a few trees here. All right, so these are little trees. They're our forest next to us, and I did a light color, and now I'm going to take a darker color and put it along the side that's facing away from the light. can blend it out a little bit. Now this is just an exercise. We're not trying to get into the tiny details of things. We're not trying to make this a masterpiece. We're studying light and how to translate light and really just getting down to the basics. So I don't want you to get caught up in a lot of the details. We can add more details on later to the ground. So that looks, you know, okay. I'm going to switch to my size 4 brush and give it some branches. And I'll actually do some sap green. So same thing, I'm going to give it a little bit of a canopy up here. And we're going to start light with the yellow. And green, so this is like a yellow and green mix. And as I build this in, I'm going to build it darker on this side in different layers. So a lot of times when you're starting a piece, whether you're going from your imagination or you're copying from a photo, which is highly advisable, or you're copying from real life, like plein air, you're out observing something, the first thing you want to do is look for your light. Where is it and how is it affecting? How is it affecting your landscape in front of you or the objects in front of you, whatever it is? I mean, this applies to when you're painting a glass, a person's face, a sneaker, whatever you're painting. And I'm making the lighter side a little more yellow, just to give the impression that the light, the sunlight is a little yellow. And you can even do that on the trees. That's kind of why I went with burnt sienna, to give it a reddish yellow tint to it, but we can give it a little sunlight on our trees. All right, so let's put in some more sap green. I'm like running out of sap green. I just got some in the mail though the other day, finally. They sent me the wrong one and I had to quickly be like, this is wrong. This is not correct. Please send me the right color. They sent me Payne's gray, but it was labeled as sap green. It was so bizarre. Like there was an extra weird little label on it. All right, so we have some canopy in our trees. Darker on this side, lighter on this side. Now, here's where I think the magic happens. We're going to focus on the ground and what the light is doing. So all of these trees, these objects, they're in the way. They're blocking light. So there shouldn't be this much light on the ground. It needs to be darker. So we're going to go with some darker sap green, because the ground is green. And actually I'm going to give it, so we don't want to just put gray over top of it. We want to go with the color that the ground already is. And do a darker version of that that is tinted with either black or gray, or it's just a more saturated version of itself. I'm going to tint this with a little bit of Payne's gray just to desaturate it a little bit. All right, so if your light is coming from this way, depending on how you can make your shadows go straight across, you can make your light this way and have your shadows come down at an angle. So whatever the shadows do, that is going to tell the viewer where the light is. So I'm going to have ours kind of going across the page this way from the base of the tree out. And you can put shadows in for things you can't see also, like things that are further over here, they'll still cast a shadow. And shadows aren't perfect all the time. They're not always perfect harsh lines, because especially in a forest, there's a lot of things going on up here. There's a lot of other branches. Like I said, you can't see little things. So shadows get a little funky. I'm just going to take some of this brown and add a few extra branches kind of up here. and then even darken the side of our trees a little bit more. But look how that creates depth and interest and makes things grounded. So these trees now look like they're grounded to the ground. They're interacting with the whole world around it, not just kind of standing in a vacuum in space. And you can have kind of lighter shadows in here, mimicking like those thinner branches. They are going to be darkest kind of right towards the base of the tree. So there we go. So that just shows you how simple it can be to create kind of light and shadow. You can play with more things like the sky, and you could make this more bright and dramatic behind it. Sorry, I keep bopping the camera. I'm so sorry. And you can play with the light in the sky, but this is the simplest form of there's light over here. It's coming through our forest. Our trees are in the way, so they're casting shadow on the ground. So let's try that again over here, and we'll do it a little differently in a different direction. All right, I'm going to go back to my larger brush, and I'm going to pick up that nickel azo yellow. Here, let me clean a little space for myself over here. All right, so I'm going to pick up some of this yellow, and I'm going to start the sky with yellow. And we are going to kind of fade up into almost nothing. And now I'm going to take some blue. This is tricky when you're doing blue, like a blue sky, but you want golden yellow light. I don't really want them to mix. There's a little bit of blue sky up there. So we're going to make our yellow and our blue as light as possible in the areas that they interact. There we go. So they're not actually really mixing. They're just fading off into white. All right, and then I'm going to take even more yellow. I'm going to put it right here. This is going to be covered up mostly, but this is kind of simulating this golden, like super bright sunrise, like super dramatic color. And then right here at the horizon, we're going to make it very light. All right, so we're going to leave that, let it dry. Let's do we'll do some ground line with some green. In here. And then we're just going to bring this down to a lighter kind of yellowy green color down here. Don't worry, this will make sense, I think. Sometimes when I'm doing this with y'all, I'm experimenting too. I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, I pretty much know what's going to happen, but you never stop learning in art. Okay, so we're going to leave that the way it is. We're going to put in trees again, but we're going to put trees in the center, and the light is going to be coming from behind, so our shadows are going to be coming down in front of us, and I'll show you a little bit about perspective. So let that dry, and we'll come back. All right, we're back, and we're going to do the same thing. So I'm going to build in some tree trunks here. I'm going to use this lighter color, but we're definitely going to go a lot darker because these are backlit trees, and we're going to try to do lots of different widths. I'm going to start a few down a little closer. So these are going to go darker. I'm going to leave a little bit of light on the edges, but they're backlit, so mostly they're in silhouette, and we're going to create lots of them. Creating lots of depth So you're seeing just a little bit of this forest through there. I'm being really kind of sloppy and messy. The further they get back, the lighter they will be. So they will be kind of like these really light ones, where you don't have to make them too dark, kind of grayed out. All right, let's switch to, I'm going to switch to this raw umber. So kind of going down the center, but leaving the edges with a little bit of light kind of spilling over. You could totally do these in full silhouette. It'll still make sense. And then raw umber in the background. Phew, bless me. Whew. Now I have to edit that out. Maybe I'll leave it in. You guys will know I'm human. Okay, so let's add in some canopy. We'll put in some trees, or some of the canopy of the trees. Get a little yellow. And this yellow on top of the blue is fine because we want it to be somewhat green. But the same thing, kind of around the edges, you can leave it this yellow light, but as we get towards the bottom, certainly, in the front, we want this to be darker, but feel free to leave like little peaks of light kind of coming through. I'm even going to use a little Payne's gray in my green, my sap green. And I'm just stippling in greenery here. I'm not trying to be super precise. I'm going to switch to my smaller brush and just add in a few branches to kind of connect a few things here. Make this make sense. So this is looking pretty good. A lot of people might stop here and be like, okay, I have trees, I have a ground, I have a sky, I got some branches in there, they look okay. But adding in the shadows is going to make a huge difference, a dramatic difference. All right, so we got some branches in there. Same thing, let's go with sap green. Now, with perspective, something that's further away from you and it's casting a shadow and it's coming out towards the viewer, it's not going to come straight on. Maybe this one will come pretty straight on, but it's going to be thinner here and it's going to get wider as it comes towards you. And then these are all going to kind of fan out a bit away. And again, they're going to meet the tree branch there, but then they're going to get wider. And don't forget, we have shadows being cast kind of all through this big thicket. This one should have been more straight on. I got a little crazy with my... All right, so now I'm even going to take some darker color towards the base. Make some of these even a little darker. There we go. And that is how we tell the viewer where the light is coming from. So now they know absolutely that the light is coming from behind these trees. And it's coming this way through the trees. And see how much it makes this glow, and it just really sells the view. And now I'm going to go in, I'm going to even put in like some bushes down here towards the base to kind of fill in these gaps here. Because the more contrast we put in here, the more this looks like it's super bright. And even here, this can be a little bit more in shadow. So there we have it. We have our light from two different directions. We have it from the side, we have it backlit, and you can see how these are darker than these. And you could even go a little darker on these if you want to. And leaving those edges. So just doing another layer. There we go. So look at that. And then as you go further back, and these lighter ones back here, they're really catching the light and giving off that idea of a glowing background. So thank you so much for painting with me. I'm Shayna Cersei. Don't forget to check out the description of the video for links to supplies and materials that I use regularly. Leave a comment, like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and welcome if you're new. Thank you for joining me. We do watercolor journal pages a couple times a week, every week, and it's a lot of fun, and I encourage you to journal every day if you can. And thank you so much to my super thanks contributors. You're amazing, amazing, amazing. Thank you so much. And I think that's it. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me. We will be back very soon for another watercolor journal page. Until then, keep practicing, keep journaling, and I will see you soon. Take care, y'all.